Good morning. Welcome to our training for the new pre-bid Q&A tool on TxDOT.Gov. My name is Daniel LaPlante, and I'll be your instructor for today. Let's first talk about the objectives we have for this training. First, we want you to make sure that you know how to get to the contract letting page on TxDOT.Gov, which is where you'll actually find this tool. Then from there, we're going to go ahead and navigate to the Notice to Contractors dashboard. That's going to give you all kinds of information for projects across the state that are going to be up for letting, so you can start finding the project or the CCSJ you're interested in asking questions about. Then we're going to look at how to actually enter our questions and submit them into the new Q&A form. It's nice and clean and simple. And then we're going to talk about how you can view those answers and follow-ups right there in that same CCSJ, that same submission page. So again, those are our goals in terms of what is of concern to our contractors. And like I said, you're welcome to stick around for the next part, because then what we're going to explore what TxDOT employees are going to see on that TxDOT.Connect end. The thing is, when it comes to being able to review these questions from our contractors, we have to do some work in advance. And that's making sure that we have people assigned to any given project, a CCSJ, that are going to be those who actually review and then respond to these questions. So we're going to have to go set up who those people are in any given project. Then we're going to look at one of those forms so we can see what is it that we can and can't do to make sure that we can provide answers to those questions we've received from our bidders. And then lastly, there's going to be a whole number of different forms submitted over time. We're going to want to make sure we have the ability to go back and check those forms throughout their various stages or statuses. So before I move on, right, these are our objectives for today. We have a nice clean hour to get these done in. We are happy to have you and to respond to questions. I'm going to ask if you guys have any. I do want to encourage you folks, if you don't feel like it's urgent, to speak up, because we have so many people in this meeting today, in this training. We do encourage you to submit those questions in the chat. If something pops up urgently and you're afraid I'm going to move on, we're okay with taking verbal questions. The thing about those is we want to make sure we provide adequate time to everybody in the hour given. We'll also talk about other resources coming up in the future, other resources you have at your disposal. If you need to reach out with questions, something pops into your head after this, have no fear, there are ways to reach us. And this is not the only training session we'll be conducting. We'll take a look in just a few minutes at the various dates we've got upcoming as well. Before we move on, I want to make sure you know who it is you're listening to. My name is Daniel LaPlante. I'm the guy on the right. I have a lot more hair than I do in that picture now, but I'm a member of the TxDOT.Connect training and OCM team. To my left is my supervisor, Will Boyd. Will is also going to be assisting in conducting this training with you guys today. And not featured on this page is a whole number of various folks here to provide support, including, for instance, our product owner, Sangeeta. We're going to have all kinds of backup to make sure that we're able to help provide you with the answers that you need to your questions, not specific to a CCSJ, but about this functionality in general. So again, guys, I'm Daniel. I'm so happy to have you. Will, was there anything you wanted to say to introduce yourself?
Nope. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Daniel.
No problem. Thank you. All right, now, we don't want to leave you up a creek without a paddle. We know there's going to be a lot that we're covering today. I get to use TxDOT.Connect all the time, but this is going to be new to some of you folks, and we recognize that not everything you learn in an hour is necessarily going to stick immediately, and that's okay. Like I mentioned before, there are ways to reach us. There are also going to be resources available to you. So one thing that we have regarding this Q&A functionality is the ability to access demonstrations. We have videos that are going to essentially show you what I'm showing you today. And what I actually find more useful, because there's a step-by-step with every answer you will need, or at least hopefully all the answers you'll need, will be our reference materials. Specifically, we have what are called job aids. These are step-by-step guides that take you through each element of the process. each step in the process. And I'll be showing you in a few minutes where you can access those. Those will be available in multiple places. For our contractors, you'll be able to find them on TxDOT.Gov. We have a training page. For those of us that are internal, our TxDOT employees, you can go to that same place, but you can also access those guides that are relevant to you on Crossroads. And we'll take a look at both of those resources in just a moment. I mentioned a moment ago that you can reach out to us. This is really important. This is what we do for a living. It's we develop training, we deliver training, and then we answer questions about that training. So if you have a question about training specifically, like, hey, what date is this coming up? Or how do I need to access it? Or how do I get the invite forwarded to me? All great questions. We would have you send those questions to TxDOT_training@TxDOT.Gov. And Will, if I could get your help to drop that actual address in the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll do that. And I just want to mention that our email address of preference is actually the second one, TxDOTConnect@TxDOT.Gov. Yeah, that training one is really only used for communicating with our workforce dev team and the stuff that's getting published. So preference is definitely for the TxDOTConnect@TxDOT.Gov, which I have just entered in the chat.
Awesome, thank you. So yes, that is our general mailbox regarding TxDOT.Connect. We're so happy to have your questions. So folks, please, if something pops into your head, not within the scope of this hour, God knows many of you are probably distracted or trying to do other things. That's how it is nowadays. That's okay. We are here to help you. We do recommend when you have questions, sometimes we find that it can be a little confusing to understand what somebody's asking for. It makes sense in their head at that moment, but they're also, they see the page. We ask that you try to format your questions describing who it is that you are, right? I'm a contractor with this company, or I am a professional engineer, and I want to be able to do this thing. I want to submit my form, or I want to put too long of a question in the field. So that I can do this, so I can get my form in, or so I can get somebody to review it. If you explain who you are, what it is that you're trying to do, and then why, we're going to be able to answer your question to the best of our ability in a way we might not be able to. So we don't have to go back and forth and spend your time with clarifying questions. We can get what we need up front and get you what you need as soon as possible.
And hey, Daniel, I just want to lean in real quick. We're talking a lot about ways to submit your questions. Just to be clear, this is just like questions to the project team. This is not like transportation project specific questions. Please don't email us with your questions about specific proposals or specific CSJs. We're not the right folks for that.
No, he's absolutely right. So this is absolutely in regards to the functionality we're describing today, specific to what we're training, the pre-bid Q&A functionality on TxDOT.Gov that feeds into TxDOT.Connect. Thank you, Will. Good clarification. All right, folks, I'd like to go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to have to shift off the screen for just a moment, and then I will show you my browser full of all kinds of interesting tabs regarding pre-bid Q&A functionality. So give me just one moment. All right, my friends. Will, can I get your confirmation that everyone can see the page that I am on?
I am seeing your TxDOT.Gov.
Awesome. Okay. So let's start with the basics for our contractors, because they're the ones that we are addressing right now. Hopefully you've all been fortunate enough to visit TxDOT.Gov. In fact, actually, what I will be primarily using today, folks, are essentially training environments. That means what I don't want to do is accidentally send real questions to real people with real projects. That's not what I want to do. There's an actual or real TxDOT.Connect environment and a real TxDOT.Gov. For the majority of this training, I'll be using testing or training environments so that you guys can see this without us doing anything real in real life that causes trouble for anyone. So before I jump to that, I do, excuse me. Again, pointing out here this preview TxDOT.Gov, this looks just like the real one. When we navigate here, there are a lot of resources that TxDOT has at our disposal. But in terms of what we are concerned with here today, we're trying to go look at these projects so we can ask questions about them. So I'm going to cut to the chase. Once we get here to this TxDOT.Gov page, I'm going to want to go ahead and scroll down all the way to the very bottom. There's a lot here that we're passing up, a lot of good stuff. And I see at the bottom, there's a menu here, right? A series of options that you can click on, all these menus. The one that we are particularly concerned with here falls under the section titled Business. And under that, we will see here a link that specifies that we're interested right now in talking about project or contract letting. This page is full of all kinds of good stuff for you. So again, we've gone to TxDOT.Gov. We have scrolled down. We see here that there's a series of menus. Specifically, we're going to select that one that says Business and further Project Contract Letting. Now, again, if you guys have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. Will, I'm going to rely upon you to let me know if you see any of those.
I got it.
Awesome. So I'm going to click on this link here, Project Contract Letting. So there's a lot on this page available to you. The first thing I want to point out here is this banner. This speaks to what we're doing right now. It describes here that TxDOT has worked with you guys, external contractors and partners, to update this pre-bid Q&A process. It is cleaner, it is streamlined, and it says here training starts soon. Training has begun. You are in it. That is us. In fact, you see here that we have a series of options, including option 1. That's today, February 13th from 2 to 3 Central. Now, here's what's cool. If I click this little thing here, it's going to give me the option. Actually, I don't want to mess with that right now. It's going to bring you to the actual call itself, like you're in right now. And this will happen again for both option 2 and option 3. You can join the call, the training itself. I don't want to actually try to rejoin the meeting I'm already in. That would get messy. Now, there's a link here as well that says find out what changed. You can click that as well. It's going to be what we're covering right now. So this banner shows you what will be the various dates for training. You can click on them and join like you have. The next section as I scroll down is an opportunity for you to stay updated on what's going on. So it says here you can subscribe to letting updates for contractors and bidders. That's a lot of you on the call today. All you have to do to subscribe is go ahead and enter your email address and then click sign up. And then you'll be able to receive these regular updates via email. So we want you guys to be able to kind of keep an eye on what's going on around here. Next, we have a section here describing what letting is. I'm going to say it's probably a fairly safe bet, right? That most folks on this call know what letting is. You're concerned with the process of submitting questions, or pre-bid questions. It does describe here letting is the official receipt and opening of bids and determination of the apparent low bidder. We conduct our statewide low bid construction and maintenance contract letting in Austin 2 consecutive days each month. The letting schedule is available for the current and following fiscal year. So we described that here. It even points out that we have a live video stream available for each statewide monthly letting. I suspect for most of you, again, this is pretty boilerplate, but I wanted you to know that it's here. There are also a series of links here to get more information on all of these topics, including letting dates, how the process of bidding works, what occurs after letting, the actual requirements to bid, as well as other resources for our bidders. We do have more information on statewide letting here, as well as district local lettings. Further, we get more specific. We have a list here of all of the dates of the upcoming letting dates through the end of 2023. So all of this is really kind of leading you, right? It's all kind of leading you to water. This is letting you know all the information you might need to know about letting on a broader scale so that we can now get more specific. Presumably you're coming here because you've got a project you're interested in potentially bidding on, but you've got questions. So here's all the lead up. As we scroll a little bit further down this page, we see there's a section dedicated to links about bidding itself. And what we're concerned with here today, most specifically, is this section called pre-bid Q&A responses. So I'd like to go ahead and click on this. And again, remember, we are in essentially what is a test environment. So you will see this very noticeable red lettering at the top that says E2, E4 testing only, not for general use. Again, folks, what I don't want to do is go submit real questions to real approvers about real projects. That's not what today is for. I do want to point out something though. This page is going to look very much like the real page that you will see on the real TxDOT.Gov with just a minor difference or two. Oops. Let me find this real quickly. I'm going to show, hold on one moment. Oops, I lost my page, guys, forgive me.
It's the one with a little graphic that says workbook.
Yes, thank you, Will. There's a lot of resources here to show you guys. So what we see here, folks, is the actual TxDOT.Gov page, not the testing one that we're using. And you'll notice the only real distinction here, but one of value to you, is that there are two links here. Most of you may not have had the opportunity to look at our dashboards before. This is our Notice to Contractors dashboard, specifically looking at those projects up in the next 2 upcoming months. If you have questions, right, about how some of these things work, you will see that we have job aids and the ability, right, to look at our print history. And if you're curious about our dashboards within this job aid about pre-bid Q&A functionality, you will even have a link to another job aid that shows you how to use this page. Be very brief about how to do that because we want to make sure we get to where we need to get. But if I click this link, you'll see here that there's a job aid here that is going to cover the exact steps that we are discussing today. This is always going to be available to you 24 hours. So as you can see, as I scroll down, it's going to start with an introduction, just as we've begun with today. We're going to see it describes this process of how you get to the part where you actually get to submit your questions. It's going to briefly describe how to navigate this Notice to Contractors dashboard that we're about to have a little fun with. It's going to then show you the actual page where you can submit your questions and later view answers. It's going to show you how to view those questions and answers. And that's going to be the actual gist of what we cover. So you're never going to be in a place where what we discussed today is not always available to you. So again, the point of me jumping over to the real TxDOT.Gov is to show you both that particular resource to you, as well as this additional link here that provides information on the pre-bid Q&A print history. It's going to make your life a little easier if you want to get specific. Will, you had mentioned, I'm going to click this link here, that you wanted to speak to this a little bit.
Yeah, and I think we should probably come back to this a little bit later. This will actually be involved later in the process as we begin to post answers to questions.
Sure.
So let's talk first about how they submit their questions, and then once we talk about how they then view the answers, this is going to come back into play. Let's take a look at it then.
Sure, I like your style. Thank you. So those are both, again, going to be available on the real thing. They are going to be here with these link buttons at the top. So you've got an assist at all points. Now I'm going to jump back over here to our testing Notice to Contractors dashboard. Other than those two buttons, it's identical. And for those of you who aren't familiar, what you're going to see here again is a series of, this is a visual representation of the various projects we have coming up in those next 2 months. They're broken down by specific districts and divisions. You see here, it also is going to indicate along this axis what the cost of those actual projects are, right, or what those estimates are. We see here, if we look over to our left, there's a left nav menu. This is going to allow you to filter because we've got a decent number of projects coming up within that time frame. And we want you to have the ability to be able to narrow this down, right, to the particular projects that you're concerned with. If we see here at the bottom, underneath this actual representation, this table of all of these projects and their districts and their estimates, what we're going to see then is that when we are looking at results from what we enter into this filter, right, what helps you find what you need, the results will be listed down here. You're going to have a whole row of information about a given project, but this information is going to be arranged, understandably, by date. So we see here that today is the 13th. February 13th is the date listed here. Now, for the sake of example, I know there's a particular project. Let's say that I'm looking to bid on a project in Tyler. I want to make my life easy, guys. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to filter this out to only find those projects that pertain to Tyler. So I'm making my life easy. This is one way to do it. There's many ways to do it depending upon what it is that you're looking for. So I'm going to go here to this drop down that says district and division. And at this point, every project in every district and division that falls within this category the next 2 months, right, is available. They're all checked. I don't want to look at all of those. So I'm going to go ahead and click this one that says all, and it deselects all of them. And then further, what I'm going to do is scroll down here and I'm going to get to specify that I want district Tyler. I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to jump off of that drop down. And then what I see here then is a series of projects that pertain to that particular, like to Tyler, that district. And I know that the example of the project I have a question about that I want to bid on is right here. I know my CCSJ, it's listed here. It's for February 15th. So I'm going to come over here, and if we notice, this project has all kinds of information in this row, but the one place that we've got a link, the way to get to what you want to get to is right here in blue. It's a hyperlink. And if all I do is hover my cursor over that particular link, it gives me some important information. And most importantly, right here at the bottom, it says available links. And here's what we're here for. This is that pre-bid Q&A link that takes us to the page where we can submit our questions. Now, folks, this is indeed what we're here for, but it's important to make sure if you have questions about the dashboard, please submit those now. And remember, we do have a job aid for that purpose. I'm going to click pre-bid Q&A and voila. It's going to take a moment for us to load, but here's the form on which we can submit our questions. We've got some header information here, guys. We've got our CCSJ. We have a description of the project, and we have the project ID. This is not new. You could see that on the page before. We want to get to the good stuff. We see here that there's information about the letting date. There's only 2 days remaining until that date. And what we see here is that we can submit questions. So there's both a list of questions that already exist for this particular project, but I think what you would like to see first, as I would like to show you first, is your ability to ask a new question. So what I'm going to do is click on this left nav menu, and select Ask. Yes.
Sorry, before we get any further, I want to pause right there. We did have a hand raised, and I want to make sure if that person has any questions, you can either enter your question in the chat or come off mute briefly.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, my name is Saida. When I go over those letting estimates, it has the option official bid items, not the one that you opened, which is pre-bid and Q&A. It just says under available links, it says official bid items.
Official bid items.
And I'll speak to that. So the example that Daniel's using here, we actually set this up as a test example so that it would have the availability to submit those questions. That link, that pre-bid Q&A link, Daniel, can you hover over it, make it that pre-bid Q&A link that you're seeing here that Daniel's showing you, it only becomes available whenever you're within that 21 days of letting. And for this project in real life, it actually is not within those 21 days yet. So if you're trying to do this in the real environment right now for this project example, you won't actually see that link yet. Okay. But for any projects that are within 21 days of letting, you should begin to see those pre-bid Q&A links available.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Great question, Saida. Thank you. So folks, returning to this form, right? We've navigated through exactly what she described. We found our estimate for our CCSJ. We hovered over it. We clicked the link. We got to this page. Now we can start actually asking questions. Now we've got a very clean header to our form here. Actually, it's not even a header, it's just the form. And we only need a handful of pieces of information from you. Now, what you see is that next to each one of these fields is a little asterisk. That's telling us these are required fields. If these fields are not all filled out, we're not going to be able to submit our form. So you're going to find yourself kind of hitting a wall if you don't make sure to enter all of this information. We keep it pretty sweet And simple, you're going to enter your first name. Mine is Daniel. My last name is LaPlante. My email address. And then my phone number. Now, I do want to point out, folks, no frills. All you have to do in terms of the format of your phone number is simply enter the actual digits themselves. So I'm just going to put in 777, 777, 7777. Okay. I have the ability sometimes to forget to put the last digit on phone numbers. It'll call you out real quick. It needs that information because people need to be able to contact you about those questions. The next field is important, right? We've got to be able to categorize these questions so that future people can see them and know what they're going to look at. Remember, the whole point of this, right, is that it's TxDOT's responsibility to remain transparent. We can't show any favoritism to particular bidders or contractors. We want to make sure that information available to any one bidder, vendor, contractor is available to everyone. And so you're seeing that very much in play here. There's this transparency that says, okay, what are the topics people are asking about and what are the particular questions that they're asking? So I'm going to keep it real vague, guys. I am not a contractor or a bidder or a vendor. I'm a trainer. So I'm just going to simply create this simple question title, right? It's kind of category, culvert questions. It's a required field. I have to put that in there. Then I can get to the point where I can actually get to the heart of it, right? I can ask what I need to know. So I'm going to ask my question here. What are culverts? This is ridiculous, but it is what it is. So I've asked my question and I want to go ahead and add that. Now, folks, we recognize you may have more than one question about a given topic. That's to be expected. In fact, you're going to have the ability to add up to 5 questions for any given question title. So I'm going to add this one. There we go. And notice that when I hit add, automatically it's going to provide us the opportunity to go ahead and submit a second one. So 4 questions about culverts. Again, same rules before. I go ahead and hit add question, and then my question is available on the form. Now we can add up to 5. Another. And more. The end. Question 5, that's our limit. Now let's say that we realize, oh, I actually put the same question twice, or my boss walks by and he's like, Bill, we already know the answer to that. You don't have to do that. Take that off. Don't waste anybody's time. If you find that you don't want to keep a question, that's cool. You can remove a question, but you can only remove the most recent one. So if you find that question 2 is not one you want to submit, just bear in mind that we'll be moving backwards. So we've now removed question 5. We can remove question 4 in the same fashion, and it takes us back to 3. Again, I want to pause because I'm moving at a pretty steady clip. In many ways, guys, this is the meat of it, right? Like this is the form itself.
So Daniel, while you're pausing there, I do just want to comment on some of the things I've posted in the chat and one question that we just got.
Sure.
I addressed some of the questions earlier about the subscription. It's for any updates to the project letting information dashboard and notice of contractors dashboard, so statewide and local, both. I also provided some links to other training resources on just the dashboards in general. I summarized the steps you've gone through so far to arrive at this page. Talked also about the question title, just to keep it simple, y'all, because it's just how you'll be able to recognize your question later. You can say, you know, such and such company question or whatever if you want to. If you don't want your name to show up, don't include your name in the title. You can your name as you enter it in the form earlier will be removed. It'll be anonymous. And then there were a couple of questions here that that popped up. So can anyone just post a question? There's no screening. That's actually correct. We're required to provide that ability for people to submit questions. The folks that review those questions, they can choose to disregard them and not publish an answer back. So if you just say Daniel LaPlante looks funny and that's your question, then yeah, we're not going to respond to that and we're not going to post it back to the website. We ask that you don't spam us, but only the questions that TxDOT receives and responds to will be published back to TxDOT.Gov. question here about no attachment allowed when asking a question. Currently, no. If that is an enhancement that y'all see value in, let us know. The response will allow our TxDOT subject matter experts to submit to attach a document, if that makes sense. And then Valerie asked, can you go back and edit a previous question before you submit it? Sure, yeah, there's no problem with that. And then Sharon clarified, yeah, there's screening. Once it gets into TxDOT.Connect, our folks can choose not to respond to that and can choose to not have it get published back to TxDOT.Gov. So we're screening it internally, but there's you're not required to be a contractor or bidder once you in order just to get to this page and click submit. There's no screening before you click submit, just a screening once we are ready to publish those back. A few other questions are popping up here while I'm talking. Rahul asked, what if you had more than 5 questions? We wanted to keep it simple. Our understanding and consensus from the folks that we worked with was that I think that we are seeing that generally people don't need more than 5 questions. Keep in mind, you can put an awful lot of content into any one of these question text box. They're up to, I think, 3,000 characters, so you can write quite the novel in there. If you have more than 5 questions, you find yourself not able to fit that all in there, you can simply submit that as another form. So if you have 6 questions or 10 questions, you can just submit another form, just asking for your name and email address again, so we make sure we got the right contact info. And the last question I think that we've got here for now is it would help if we were able to add attachments, just in answering questions, and that's cool. I think our team can take that as a future enhancement. And for now, keep using it here the way that it is. And I see that Sangeetha just put her hand up. Sangeetha, did you want to address that item there at the end?
I am taking those enhancements as a request, with regards to having attachments when a question is being asked.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Other question popping up here. Will the author of the question be posted with the answers? No, unless you include your name in the question. So Daniel, if you'll scroll up just a little bit to the part where you entered your name and email and phone number, that first name, last name, email, phone number, that's stuff that only TxDOT sees. It will not be posted with the answers. Other question here, can other contractors see the questions that are submitted, but TxDOT chooses not to answer? Currently, no. Currently, it is only visible to everyone else once TxDOT has responded, and that response gets published back. That is how we're kind of introducing the screening into that. I know that has come up previously, so Sangeetha, feel free to address that if there's anything further on the idea of us seeing the questions that have been submitted, but the TxDOT has not yet responded. Anything to add there, Sangeetha?
As of now, it is only that any questions which has responses can only be seen. But yeah, I have noted on this point, and I can take it out. Yeah, I can definitely have a conversation on this one.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you for all of that. I'm working with a great team with a lot of information. I appreciate you guys. And thank you for keeping an eye on that chat for me, Will. Folks, keep bringing them in, right? We want to be able to give you a forum here in which you can get the information that you need. And so what we've done so far, right, is we've put everything in the form. We've done everything really here, except for actually submitting the form itself. So we're going to stick with what we've got. We've got our name, email, phone number, a question title, and then a breakdown of the actual individual questions themselves. We've removed and added what we wanted to, and here we are ready to submit. I know you're going to be shocked, guys, but the way we submit is by clicking this button that says submit. Now, bear in mind, folks, now that we've submitted said request, as it says here, right, the pre-bid question has been received and TxDOT is looking into it. We will respond within 48 hours. So that's going to be the general time frame in which somebody at TxDOT, him or herself, right, will receive some indication or end indication of that form in TxDOT.Connect. It will be assigned to someone specific, and they will provide a response. So I'm going to click OK here. And now we're in this situation where we have a question that's been submitted for a given project. Now, within 48 hours, that question will be answered unless the question is invalid for some reason, right? Like it says, Daniel is weird looking, which is not even a question, it's just a fact at this point. But if there's a legitimate question submitted, then that's going to be ultimately available to you in terms of answers. And when I say you, I don't mean just the person who submitted it, I mean to everybody. Again, the purpose of this is to make sure that questions or answers rather, and information about a project is available to all, not just the specific person asking it. So that's why you don't need to worry about your name being involved, because the answer is not specific to you. It's for the entire audience of contractors, bidders. It's available to the public. So with that said, then, if I'm on the page dedicated to this particular CCSJ, I can then go here to my menu and see a list of questions. Now, the one we just submitted, that has to go through an actual workflow. And so that goes into TxDOT.Connect. People have to review it. We're here together. I don't have time to pretend to be 4 different people, right? Because what you need and what you need out of this time is to see what it looks like. So we've gone ahead and set up another example of an actual question and response. I'm going to click here where it says training example. That's our question title. And as you see here, the question is listed as well as an answer. In fact, what's available to you as anybody viewing this, if you see this question and then the answer, and that sparks an additional question in your mind, this isn't the end of the road. What you can do is, in response to the response, is ask a follow-up question. And you can see that very easily indicated here. There's another button that says ask a follow-up question. Click the button. Guess what? I know you're shocked. It's going to have the exact same format as before. Enter your information so they know who to contact in case they need to, and know that whatever your question title and question text are, those will be the only things that are seen past that point. So it would work the same, by the way, guys. I put in my name. I'm only doing this because I want you to see that little button light up at the bottom. See here, I click off and I have the ability to submit. So I was going to say we can play this game. I don't think it's playing a game, but we can follow this path ad infinitum as long as it falls within the appropriate time before it's, we can receive bids for that project. So I'm going to hit submit here. And again, we scroll up and we see that we have 48 hours to respond. Do we have any questions? You've asked some really good ones so far. We're so glad. That's the whole purpose of this, is to give you guys the chance to get what you need.
Yeah, and I think we'll try and put together an FAQ for this as well. We're getting some really good questions. A couple more that popped up in the chat. What's the latest a contractor can ask a question? Now, on the day of letting, so there's a bids received until date. On the day of letting, it will pop up and say we are no longer accepting questions. But even within a day or two before letting, it will pop up and just let you know, hey, this is really close to letting. We may not be able to respond in time, so please bid as advertised. The other question that popped up in the chat here is, if I've got a really complicated question, it may need more than 48 hours to get a good answer. And I guess that's more of a comment, and that's absolutely true. We've heard that several times from some of our external bidders and partners. And so, we do our best to answer within 48 hours, but I think the goal there is to make sure we get a good, substantial answer back to folks, not just to observe that timeline. And I think hopefully folks can reach out to you and say, hey, we are still working on that. I can't speak to that. We're not the ones that answer them, but we do as much as possible try to observe that 48-hour timeline. A couple of other questions here. If some contractors continue to send pre-bid questions to the area offices the old way via email or phone call, does the area office need to direct them to submit it the new way so that all the responses are posted consistently? So for our area offices, please look to your construction division leadership. They'll give you some direction on that. I think in some cases here at the beginning, There will be some negotiation. It'll kind of depend on the circumstances, whether it makes sense for the area office to go ahead and submit that, fill out that form for them real quick, just to make sure everything gets posted consistently. But to your last few words there in that question, that is the main point of this, to make sure that these responses are posted in one spot that everyone has access to in a standardized process and in a standardized format, so that everyone has access to the same information. So I'll leave it to the area offices and the construction division to give individual direction on that. Next question here, that 48 hours to respond. Yeah, it does not include weekends or holidays. So we're talking about basically 2 business days there is really what we're saying. Brian asked, will there be a way to export all of the Q&A? That goes back to the report that Daniel almost pulled up a moment ago. Yes, the short answer is yes, there is a way, and we'll show you that shortly. And then another question, so we can direct them to fill out this form then. I would encourage you all, so those of you who work at TxDOT, those of you who work as bidders, we really want folks to start trying this out. And maybe you're noticing that it's not doing quite what you want. Hey, let us know, give us some feedback, and we can make sure that this works for everybody. But it's to make sure that we try and standardize that as much as possible. And I'll let our area office folks and the different folks that are doing these responses kind of call the shots and make the decision on how they want to manage them. You absolutely can redirect them to fill out the form. We don't want to stop someone from asking their question, or just say, no, you can't ask your question in the way that they've chosen. Another question here, seems like the pre-bid Q&A would open up at the unofficial notice to allow for getting that process started. The TxDOT side wouldn't have to answer until the official notice. Most contractors get started thinking about the job at the unofficial notice. Makes sense. And I know that as we move forward, we have some other releases and other functionality planned for later in the spring and summer. And so that might change at that juncture. But at this time, that pre-bid Q&A link becomes available in the quote unquote official notice, which is it's from the notice to contractors, and it's within 21 days of that let date. We're getting a little short on time. I want to make sure that Daniel has the chance to get through everything, so I'll continue to answer these questions in the chat. So Daniel, go ahead and take it away from here.
Thank you. Before we move on, folks, we don't have much more that is relevant to contractors. I do want to point out that if you are concerned with this project and keeping an eye on these answers, you can go ahead and favorite, right? Bookmark this particular project so that you're able to come back and forth at your own convenience. It took me a bit to kind of get to the various steps to get here. I always want to be transparent so that you guys don't have to worry about making assumptions on what link to go where. Now that you have that tool, also know you have the ability to get here just by bookmarking it. Will, I don't know if it makes sense for the sake of time, but you did bring up that particular link regarding, or I brought up that link rather. Hold on one moment. Regarding the pre-bid Q&A print history. I don't know if we want to speak to that real briefly.
Yeah, I can do that. Basically, and it's available in the live version from a button that appears up at the top. But it takes you to this page. It will allow you to print a full question and answer packet for a given CCSJ. You just need to work with some of the filters here along the right-hand side of the page. So you can just choose some of those. Right now in the live environment, there aren't any that are available yet because we haven't responded to any of them yet. And so that is going to be available. Daniel, can you just in your tabs up at the across the top, can you click to the one that's just one to the left of this? Yes, so we can show how we got here? Yeah. So from the notice to contractors dashboard, at the top of this page is where it says pre-bid Q&A print history. That is an answer to the question about being able to print all of the questions for a given CSJ. Will it be used for any early release preliminary plans, or will those still be directed to the area office by email? I'm not familiar with that, so I'm going to go ahead and say no. I know I did hear a question about, preparing or sharing plans, etc. That is still following, unless we are specifically addressed with pre-bid Q&A, unless it is the thing that you've been doing for pre-bid Q&A in the past. Other processes are not changing at this time. Now, the most recent question actually is a good segue into our next topic, which is who's responsible from TxDOT for answering these questions. And Daniel's going to show you here as we kind of pivot away from what the bidders see and how they access this information. We're going to start talking about how TxDOT manages this. And really, it's usually going to be the same people that you see. So that is going to be listed in the general notes for any project. You're going to see the name and email address for the person who's responsible for answering those questions. But what we do within TxDOT.Connect is actually link them on the project so that they are the designated person for questions to be routed to. The interesting thing about this pre-bid Q&A process in the past, it's been kind of different depending on which district you're working with. And so we've created this process to allow that to be kind of a one-size-fits-all for all of our districts. So they can choose, is it the area office, area engineer? Is it the assistant area engineer? Is it somebody who works just as a dispatcher and then they pass the question along to somebody else? Is it the project manager? Who is the right person? The districts can decide. But for those of you who consistently work with a single district and you've gotten to know that person, it's that person. That has not changed. So you are still going to be getting responses from those same folks you're used to. They're just assigned a different way in TxDOT.Connect. Last question before we move on, I know we're getting a little short on time, is there going to be standard wording in the general notes directing the bidders to TxDOT.Connect for questions? It's not going to be directing the bidders to TxDOT.Connect. It's going to be directing the bidders to this Notice to Contractors dashboard, and specifically that pre-bid Q&A link. So Daniel, let's go ahead and bring things home here in our final 10 minutes. We still got some stuff to show our TxDOT employees on how they assign those contacts and how we respond to these questions, how it gets routed.
Absolutely. So folks, thank you so much so far. If you are contractors, feel free to drop because what we've covered so far is the part that pertains to what you have to worry about. And then what we're about to cover, like Will said, is the part that we have to worry about at TxDOT in terms of getting you your answers. So I am going to pretty significantly change gears here and just jump directly over to TxDOT.Connect. Again, for my TxDOT folks, we're going to be using this. We're using a testing environment here as well. We don't want to mess with real questions and the real thing. Now, when I log into TxDOT.Connect, where it lands me by default is the home page. That makes sense. And the reason why we care about that is if I scroll down, what I see here on TxDOT.Connect are tasks that have either been assigned to me as a member of a group. There could be multiple people in your group. And specifically what you're going to do, as you always do when you receive a task in my groups list, is when you come across the form that you're going to review, you're going to assign that to somebody else or to yourself. Now we show that process, we describe it in this job aid and in many job aids. For the sake of time, I'm not going to walk through the complexities of using the how the workflow works here on the dashboard. Instead, what I'd like to do is get to what matters here, and that's how to review the form itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. Now, something I want to make clear, you are not going to have the ability to respond to this form. You can't really receive a form and it won't go through the flow functionally if that given project does not have either pre-bid contacts or pre-bid approvers assigned. So I'm going to actually click here on this project ID. It's going to take me to the project itself. Now, when I say that it has to be assigned, this isn't just a vague time frame here, guys. Those resources have to be assigned before the project can even be sealed. So this is not playing around. You have to go through that goalpost before you can get any further in terms of getting the project sealed. This is essential. So the professional engineer who is the project manager for that project will need to assign those resources. And they're going to do so by using the left nav menu. They're going to go down to the resources grouping. I'm sorry, the project services grouping and click the resources page. So many of you may be familiar with this on my TxDOT end. What we see here is that there's a series of different kinds of project managers, folks who are important, who have to keep up certain aspects of this project. More specifically, as the project's professional engineer / project manager, you will be responsible for sealing before sealing to either assign a contact and or an approver. Now, this changes from county to county or district to district. Some of them have the resources to have both contacts who review first. Some of them will go straight to our folks that are pre-bid approvers. It just depends on the circumstances, and in a moment, I will show you a slide that shows you the workflow so that when a contractor or bidder submits that question, we can see whose hands it goes through first, right? Where's the exchange occur? Before we worry about that, though, we need to bear in mind a few things. When you go to assign that pre-bid contact, and there can be more than one, or to those approvers, right? More than one is also available to you here. They're going to have to have been established, right? A request needs to be put in to make sure that they are assigned as a pre-bid approver or contact or approver. That has to occur. So if I'm looking to assign myself as pre-bid contact number 2, right? I will select here the people picker icon. I see here that there's a series of people with the actual assigned profile of the role of a pre-bid contact. So I have that. I'm Daniel LaPlante, and I could assign it to someone else, Sean Mason, Sangeeta Kumar. I could put this here, hit done, and now we see that it's been assigned. Same thing goes for our pre-bid approver. This time I'll give it to Sangeeta, since she has been amazing with me today. Again, whenever we make any change in TxDOT.Connect, we want to make sure that and in fact, just for fun, okay, we have our maintenance manager, excellent. So remember, in terms of what we care about, it's that these roles have to be assigned before the project is sealed. Some counties or districts require a pre-bid contact, some of them do not, and that means it'll go straight to the approver. So I have to save, like with any change that I make in TxDOT.Connect, and I will save said project. That means that when these questions are submitted again by the bidders, that determines who it routes to. Now, I was on the dashboard before, and what we know, because I see on the dashboard, is that I was one of the assigned contacts or approvers. So I'm going to scroll back down here. And what I like to do, again, for the sake of time, is make sure we look at the form itself. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to click on one of these form IDs, and this is going to show us what this looks like on our end. As with any form in TxDOT.Connect, when we look at it at the top, there's going to be a header, and that gray header box is, as usual, going to give us high-level information about said project or question. The title, the ID, the bids received until date, all of the important identifiers, when it was submitted, date and time, and how many days are left until the actual letting. We will see what appears to be just a copy of the individual's information here under the submitter information. It's familiar because it's exactly what we filled out a moment ago on the form itself. Where you come in is the response part. So we've got some options here, folks. It's a series of radio buttons. Either you're going to answer, which is probably what happens in 99% of the time. We may have received an invalid question, right? Maybe someone wasn't paying attention, their hand hit the keyboard, there's a bunch of letters in there that got submitted. We're not going to mess with responding. No one at TxDOT.Gov, no bidder cares about that, right? And then lastly, in some cases, no response provided. By and large, however, we're going to go with this answer. That's the point of the training. We have the ability then, once the answer radio button is selected, to then put in our response. Culverts are wonderful. Let's go culverts. Okay. Now, while currently bidders who are interested in submitting questions cannot add actual attachments, when you are providing a response, there may be some document that you want to refer to give them further information on what they're asking about, right? You don't want to just refer to the XYZ form. If you want to put that, you can attach it, and they can have that available to them right there. And the way that you would do that is here in the section described as file upload. I will browse. I see here, I'm just going to pick a random file on my computer. I'll hit open. And then you'll see here that is now enabled the upload button. You can tell it's enabled because it's blue. I will click it. I will upload said document. We see here its file name, who created it, etc. We can remove it if need be by clicking the red X. And then what we can do ultimately is save the form so that now that this response and this actual file have been attached, we can save it. So we've saved a form. What I should have done just now was actually clicked on that form. I did not. I'm sorry, copied the actual form ID. But we have the ability now to go back and search for said form because it was saved. But for instance, that one wasn't submitted. So at a certain point, I may want to go back, hopefully, right, within 48 hours. That's our obligation. I can go to the forms search. Now you see this actually took us here by default. In life, you may need to go back and you're not going to jump to the form search by default. The way that you access this is by going to the administrative menu, you click Forms Search, and it takes you to this page. I want to go look for the form I just filled out, so I'm going to select under Form Type, Pre-Bid Questions and Answers form. I could, if I had the form ID, click by form ID. I'm going to go ahead and just look at all of them, right? I'll do actually by date. No, let's just go look at all of them. I'm going to click search. Now I'm putting in a pretty broad search here, guys. Okay. I know the one I just created was now at 213. I can come here and click it said form. I can look at it. And eventually when this form is ready, this is an arbitrary example, I can hit submit and that will take it to the next step in the workflow. Now we've hit 3 o'clock. I have about 2 more minutes. Hopefully all of you can stick around. Again, for my contractors, there's no need. For my TxDOT employees, I have one thing left to show you, and that is the actual workflow that through which these route. So I'm going to switch gears real quick, folks, to my PowerPoint presentation. Will, can you confirm that you can see my PowerPoint again?
Yes, sir, I can.
Excellent. Okay. All right, folks, so here's the workflow. As we began training, we saw that bidders are going to submit their questions. They will do so on TxDOT.Gov. So we see our first step here is our bidder. So he or she submits through the site, and then it's going to come to TxDOT.Connect. The real issue is at this point, in this particular county or district, is there a pre-bid contact assigned? It just depends. It differs from place to place. If there's an actual pre-bid contact assigned, that pre-bid contact will review, and then once they're done, they will submit that. When they submit, it'll show up then in the dashboard, right? The My Group list or the My Task list of the pre-bid approver. In the event that this is a place, right, a county or district where there is no pre-bid contact assigned, when that question is submitted on TxDOT.Gov, it will route directly to the approver. And again, they will see that on the dashboard, either in My Groups list or directly in My Tasks list. It's going to ultimately be up to that pre-bid approver, whether they see it first or second, to review, revise the form, and then ultimately approve, because that is going to be the end of the 48-hour process or less to make sure the answer to that question that was submitted appears back on TxDOT.Gov, where those bidders, any of them, right, can now see those questions available to them and to the entire public. All right, my friends. So we have covered quite a bit. We've gotten some excellent questions. Will, I'm going to go ahead and pass the floor over to you in case there are any additional questions there in the chat.
Yeah, I was answering some of them by email or by chat, and Sangeetha was as well. However, if need be, you can reach out to other people at TxDOT to provide your response. Yeah, I mean, really, I want to thank everybody for the really great, insightful questions. Here's why I love this, y'all. First of all, these have just been good questions, and I think we've had answers for most of them. Some of them are still works in progress. But this really helps us to put together like a frequently asked questions document so that we can put that out there and preempt other folks' questions. So thank you for coming to our first training class. Thank you for being the folks that work with us on this, for being open to these new processes, for being along for the ride with us on this. We've had a couple of questions here recently, just in the last couple of minutes, about notifications. I do want to mention email notifications are very much a part of this process. So if you are a pre-bid contact or a pre-bid approver, you're that person who's responsible for answering this. You might be an area engineer, an assistant engineer, you might be a project manager at the district office. You will get an email notification letting you know that there has been a question submitted, that it requires your review in TxDOT.Connect. It'll have the link to go into TxDOT.Connect and take a look at that. So definitely notifications there. And the bidders also receive email notifications. As a matter of fact, Daniel, if you'll let me, I'll pull up my example that I just received. So earlier, as we were getting ready for this class, just as things were getting started, I just went in there and made sure that I submitted that training example question that we saw, and then went into TxDOT.Connect and answered it myself. And this is as soon as the reviewer and approver, as soon as I clicked approve, submit, this email popped up in my inbox. So it is coming back to me, the person who submitted the question. I have received a response for my question. There's my CSJ, there's the project ID. Here was the title of my question, training example, and here is the answer. Now, I can also go out to the website and check that notice to contractors dashboard and go back into that, or as Daniel suggested earlier, save that pre-bid Q&A form to your favorites. But you get this email just knocking on your door, letting you know, hey, this is ready. And by the way, here's the answer. But the important thing about this, y'all, is that we are now standardizing this approach across the entire state of Texas. So no matter which district you're doing business with, you're going to have the same tool set at your disposal. And we are establishing this one-stop shop where you can go and see the answers to those questions, putting everybody on equal footing. So even though, yes, I got this email and it has the answer to my question, at the same time, it is becoming visible out on the website for everyone to view the answer to that question at the same time. I'm going to stop sharing. I think we've reached the end of our time together here. Thanks, everybody. Dan, you want to close us out?
Absolutely, y'all did a great job today. We really appreciate this. Please keep in mind that if you want to see this again, you will have an opportunity by joining on those additional dates we have listed on that contract letting page. And you can always reach out to us again at TxDOTConnect at TxDOT.Gov. Wonderful job, guys. Thank you for showing up.